Hi, thank you for joining me today. I'm Pam Kennedy of Pam Kennedy Bakes. In today's video, I wanted to share with you guys my recipe and the method I use to make my no chill, no spread sugar cookie dough. Now this recipe is a really good, forgiving, kind of backbone recipe that you can do a lot of things to it to make it your own. You can add different flavorings, you can add different types of salts, different types of butters. It's up to you. I give you this basic recipe and then you run with it. So let's get started. I went ahead and to save time, I went ahead and started a little bit of the process. So let's talk about the ingredients. First, I started off with 1 pound. That's 453 grams of unsalted room temperature butter. Now, we use room temperature, so you don't want it drippy. You shouldn't be able to shake it and it go all over the place. It should still have a little firmness to it, but yet still indent when you push your fingers into it relatively easily. So we have 1 pound, and I use unsalted butter because I'm a little bit of a control freak. I like to control and know exactly what each batch is going to taste like. If I use unsalted butter, that means I can use any brand of butter for the most part, and I control the salt instead of trying to figure out which brand of butter had the best taste for me. I control it myself. You can too. So if you're someone who likes to use salted butter in your baked goods, go for it. Try it. See if you like it that way. Drop us notes. Drop your friends notes. Let us all know what works for you. So unsalted butter, room temperature, 1 pound is in here. And to that, I have already added 1 cup or 200 grams of white granulated sugar, just plain old white sugar, 1 cup of sugar. I've also added 1 cup or 180 grams of packed brown sugar. So 1 cup of regular sugar and 1 cup of packed brown sugar into that 1 pound of butter, and I have already mixed that for 5 minutes. That's called creaming. So I've already creamed it and I've scraped down my bowl. So we've let this mix. So now we're going to continue from here because I think you guys can follow that much. So now it's going to be time into that creamed mixture. Oh, and we're going to add our egg. So this is 120 grams of cold from the refrigerator, cold egg. Now we use the cold egg because when you cream this butter and sugar together, you're gonna warm it up more because you're creating friction. So now I like to use cold eggs because I feel like it brings it all back together a little bit. Now in my cold eggs, so this is 120 grams, which is gonna be 2 really large eggs or maybe 3 medium-sized eggs. Now, I like to break my eggs into a separate cup, scramble them up, and then weigh out my 120 grams. So that's a little tip for you. Now, to this cold egg, I have already added 4 teaspoons of my favorite extracts and flavorings. Now, use a combination that works well for you. If you've got favorite oils and flavorings, use those in there. Play around, use different ones. I happen to like butter vanilla, plain old regular vanilla, and cake batter. It's a combination that I've always liked. So, and I think the kids tend to like the cake batter taste to it. But I kind of offset that sweetness by using kosher salt later, so it's all good. So I went ahead and added my extracts into my egg. You could have added it to your creamed mixture, but I added mine to my egg. No rhyme or reason, that doesn't really matter here or there. So when you are incorporating two ingredients that are very different temperatures and textures, you're gonna wanna do it slowly. So let's turn on our KitchenAid onto, I believe that's number 2 or just above stir. And I'm gonna slowly add my egg and flavoring. Now you want to add it until a little bit at a time until you don't really see that slick, slimy, sort of unincorporated trail going through your cookie dough. Give it a minute. Let it incorporate. Be patient. Let those ingredients do what they need to do. A lot of times we try to rush baking. You can't rush baking. So now I've lost all my glossy spots. So I'm gonna add the rest here. Now, of course, if I was being good, I would scrape out with my spatula, but I don't have that sitting here. So make sure you get every ounce of your flavoring and your egg into there. And let that mix up. You can incorporate, you can speed it up a little bit to help incorporate it a little faster if need be. Now that we have that together, we're going to talk about our flour. So this recipe calls for a whopping 1,010 grams of all-purpose plain regular flour. Now, I use that much flour because remember, I'm trying to get a high yielding recipe. You can always cut this recipe in half if it's just too much, but my recommendation would be not to cut the recipe in half. Go ahead and make the full recipe. Just freeze half of it for later and save yourself some time ahead of time. That's what I would recommend. So now I recommend using that digital scale to weigh out all of your ingredients, as opposed to scooping. Every now and then you can scoop, but you're gonna get the most consistent results, especially with flour, if you weigh it. Now, different flours have different densities, so not all flours are created equally. Some, like King Arthur, weigh a little bit more and have a higher gluten content to them, as opposed to maybe a store brand. Now, it's all fine as long as you're weighing those flours out. Now, if you don't have a scale, it's okay. My recommendation is that you take a whisk and you lightly fluff your flour, then use a scoop and level it off and weigh it out, measure it out that way. That, to me, I ended up getting about anywhere between 7 and 7.5 cups. So in my recipe, that will be written out in the description of this video. If you click on the little description down below, I'll have a link for a printable download, and I also will have it written out for you guys down below, along with some of these tips and tricks. So into my flour, the 1,010 grams of all-purpose flour, I have added 3 teaspoons of baking powder. Yes, baking powder. Now, baking powder will give you lift. It will give you tenderness. It doesn't cause spread. Okay? So in this recipe, I like the tenderness that you get when it puffs a bit. You can see in my cookies, they lift a little bit. They have some good, these are rolled out to 5/16, but they keep their shape. But they're still very tender inside, and I believe it's because of that baking powder. So I've added 3 teaspoons of baking powder and 1 generous teaspoon of kosher salt. Now, why do I add kosher salt to my flour? Well, I'm one of those people that likes that little bit of salt you taste at the end of, like, you know, a sea salted caramel. I like that salty sweet, salty sweet. So I like the fact that the kosher salt won't melt completely away through the baking process. So when you're biting into one of these cookies, every now and then you get this little salty finish on the end, which is lovely. And I happen to like that in my artisan baked goods. You may not like that. If you're somebody who does not like the whole sea salt thing, then please, by all means, use just fine iodized salt in your recipe, and it will just flavor, but yet not give you little hints of it at the end. You can try it out for yourself. Do what you like best. Remember, make this recipe yours. So, enough gabbing. Here we go. So I have incorporated those things together in my flour, and now I'm gonna add them to my KitchenAid. And I'm gonna add it all at once. And try not to get it all over the place as I'm doing it, because of course I'm at an awkward angle for the video. So we're just gonna add all of that flour in, just like so. And don't mind my hands, sorry. There we go, we'll set that off to the side. Wipe my hands off now that I've got flour all over the place. I'm not the most graceful baker, let's just say that. So you're gonna wanna lower this down, but as you can see, my preferred size of KitchenAid are these artisan ones, which are only, I think they're like 4.5 quart bowls, or maybe a 5 quart bowl, which is kind of small, but it's okay. But this is a lot of flour. So if you have a guard, you can use that. I don't really like cleaning those little plastic guards. I'm lazy. So I take a piece of cling wrap and I wrap it around just like so. Now I'm not gonna waste my cling wrap. Don't get on to me about being eco-friendly. I'm actually still gonna use the same piece of plastic wrap to wrap my dough to let it rest later. So, but it makes a wonderful skirt to hold all of this flour in. So we're gonna mix this. Now let's talk about mixing this flour into here. Now we're gonna mix it just until it starts coming away from those sides. Then we're gonna stop, take it out, knead it a little bit by hand until we get a good consistency, and then we're gonna wrap it up and let it rest. Now, if you are in maybe a higher climate or a climate that your things tend to be sort of on the drier side, then you may want to hold back a little bit of this flour the first time. Or if you make it the first time and it's a little on the dry side, you may be in one of those climates or have one of those high gluten flours that you may need to hold back just a touch of flour to find your sweet spot. We're all gonna have a sweet spot with our ingredients, with our environment, with our conditions. So it's up to you to kind of play around, you know, do it a time or two and get it just right for you. But don't give up if it's not exactly the way you want it right in the beginning, okay? Ask questions, we're here to help you. So I have locked my top down. I'm going to go ahead and mix this on. I think it's probably stir until it starts to struggle. Then I'll kick up that speed a little bit more, and then that's probably where we'll end up stopping. So this is at stir currently. And you want to use the lowest setting possible until you hear the machine start to kind of struggle through get through it. And we hear the struggle, so I'm going to kick it up one more notch. And there we go. We watch to make sure all that white is incorporated in there, and it's done. Now I would rather you just stop. Now today my dough's a little stickier and it is kind of coating still the inside of the bowl, but you can see all that wonderful flour is incorporated. Now, I'd rather you stop now and just do the rest by hand, because you can develop too much gluten, but you still need some. And we can do that by hand. You don't need the machine to do that. We can find a nice sweet spot and do that and control it easily with our hands. So obviously I washed my hands before we did this. Make sure you have good clean hands. Remember, this dough is gonna go through the oven, so it's gonna kill any germs. Just make sure you wash your hands really good. It's when the cookies are already baked that if you're doing them for clients, you'll wanna start wearing gloves. But for your friends and family, it's okay. Ooh, let me move this plastic out of the way here, because we're now going to take this dough and scrape it out. Now, if you see, I am working on my counter, but I have a mat down. Now this mat is wonderful. It's a silicone mat, and it kind of saves my counters from getting pretty cruddy, because I bake a lot and I use this mat to bake on, to decorate with. It's awesome. So you can see that my dough is still very, very sticky. Now, it is going to be sticky until it has been kneaded a few times and left to rest. So when I'm hitting it down like this, it's kind of like clay. So if you've ever worked with clay in class or in school, there's air pockets inside of here. Well, if there's an air pocket, that means that those ingredients aren't touching each other, and those oils and fats aren't doing their thing. They're not meshing together to create that beautiful texture. So you want to make sure that there's no air bubbles, and how I do that is I just kind of slap it down a few times, making it and shaping it into this log. And as you can see, just in the short time that we've started working with it, it's already come together so beautifully that I almost have none left on my hands. But it was really sticky to begin with. And that's what you're looking for. We want it to be at the consistency where you can put your hand on it and it's not coming off. That's where you want to stop, because the rest of the rolling will happen after you rest it, when you're rolling your cookies out. So we take our plastic wrap, one-handed, there we go. And we're gonna wrap it up. Now, this is where the magic happens, okay? Let's talk about resting. So we're gonna wrap this up. You gotta smack it. Everybody knows it's bad luck. You gotta smack your dough. Don't smack, bad luck. Every cookier knows that. So we've wrapped up our dough. Now we let it do its thing. And I mean it. Let it hang out and rest anywhere between 1 to 3 hours before you roll it out and bake it. Because all of those ingredients, that egg, all of the moisture from the butter, all of the flavorings, it's now needs to have time to soak into the flour. All of that melted sugar, now it's gonna sit there and it's just gonna soak and absorb and create the most beautiful, easy to work with sugar cookie dough you've ever seen. I love this stuff. It is so easy to work with. All right, guys, I hope you enjoy this. Let me tell you that you roll this out between 2 pieces of parchment. I roll mine 5/16, but that's your own preference. We bake them at 350 for 10 to 11 minutes, depending on the particular shape and style of the cookie. I recommend highly going ahead and making all of your cookies and then wrapping them and letting them freeze for at least 12 to 24 hours. Something amazing happens to a sugar cookie when it's been in the freezer and then you let it thaw. It changes the texture. I happen to really like that texture. So do my customers. So try it for yourself and let me know. All right, guys, if you've got any questions, which I'm sure you guys do, and it's okay, we're here for you. So drop me some questions down in those comments, like the video, subscribe to my channel. I've got lots more on there and more to come. Let me know what you guys want to see. Thank you so much for your support, and know that you can get a copy of this on my Etsy shop, as well as a printable download, or for free, you can copy and paste down from the description below. Thank you so much, guys.